Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment to the agenda just for an announcement this evening.
Yep.
You have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, what I have here, special announcement. We have a military veteran from Alton that will be representing the United States at the 2024 Paris Paralympics. Team USA announced last week that Howie Sanborn, local resident, made the triathlon team. Sanborn served in an airborne ranger, as an airborne ranger, and he was a demonstrator on the U.S. Army parachute team. He became paralyzed from the waist down on the 20th of 2012 when he was struck by a distracted driver while he was biking, according to the U.S. Triathlon. 7 months later, he completed his first triathlon as a wheelchair athlete. Sanborn has since medaled in 3 Warrior Games and in Invictus Games. This will be his first Olympics appearance in France. So just wanted to say that one of our own and fantastic. Thank you. The public participation policy applies to all selectmen meetings. A copy of this in the back of each agenda posted outside this meeting room and on the website. We'll open public input on anything for the agenda items only. Seeing anyone? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public input. No appointments this evening. We'll start right with new business. Notice of limitations waiver of liability, 91 Black Point Road, map 45, lot 8A.
Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, you'll see that the Alton Planning Department forwarded this up as a short-term rental application as part of those stipulations. A waiver of liability for private roads must be executed. This is a pre-existing residence that is on that home.
Mhm.
I mean, excuse me, on that road.
On that road, yes.
Currently.
Pre-existing with a private road.
Yeah, we talked about that at the planning meeting that I was just at.
Did you?
About these ones, yeah.
Okay.
It was unanimous to bring it to us.
Of course, the Public Works had their concerns. Obviously, this is not a town-approved road. And the police department, I really had no concerns. Fire department, same concerns as the Public Works,
Yeah, accessibility.
accessibility. But this is also waiving, we all responsibility from the town to allow them to do the short-term rental.
Right. And that also, I believe, is part of the application. They have to disclose that to their renters.
And
Mr.
this-
Chairman, I would move that we grant the waiver of liability for the property at 91 Black Point Road.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Notice of limitations, waiver of liability, 16 Peggy's Cove Road, map 40, lot 23.
Same thing.
And this is the same thing, yes.
I'll make a motion,
Short-term.
same as Mr. Shea, for we grant the notice of limitations waiver of liability for 16 Peggy's Cove Road, map 40, lot 23.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Drew Carter abstains, the neighbor.
Okay. Town treasurer.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I received the official letter of notice from the town treasurer
Mhm.
that after 25 years of service. She's notified the town that at the end of her term, she will be retiring or not seeking reelection. As you can see in her letter.
Yep.
She served the community for a very long time successfully, and we are greatly appreciated for the work that she has done, and be tough shoes to fill.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She's after 25 years and rightfully so, she'd like to retire. She's 60, is 65. She's done a wonderful job and she will be staying to the end of the
Through the
year.
end, and we're gonna work towards, getting somebody else trained up in the interim.
Okay, very good.
Until somebody can be reelected.
Okay, that's like you said, that's gonna be tough shoes to fill.
Mhm.
Okay. 2025 budget, preparation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to bring this up for discussion because as you know, we're coming into the month of August. The department heads have already been set to task on working on their upcoming 2025 budget presentations. They'll start with one-on-one presentations with myself before we bring to the board. Stacy and I worked earlier on a tentative time schedule. We're looking to have the department heads meet with me the first week of September, which I believe is the third, fourth, and fifth, and that following Monday. That would lead us into September 10th board meeting. Or, excuse me, what were we thinking about? Yes, September
September
10th board meeting. So we're looking to have those preliminary reviews so that maybe we can start setting a schedule in earlier September.
Mhm.
That will give us an earlier start this year, so the materials will be available and the board will have more time to possibly deliberate and discuss. I know that was a comment that we had last year. and
Yeah,
So,
it was tough last year.
yeah, so we will go ahead and if, that's just like I said, we put a tentative schedule, but it looked like it would fit well with the meeting schedule and also get us a jump on the budget season. If you're all right with that, then we'll plan on getting some preliminary departments scheduled for the September 10th meeting.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
I'll put all the departments on notice that we'll start the presentations to the board.
Okay.
Um,
And any questions on that? Everybody in agreement with that?
No, I think it's a good
The
idea.
The sooner the better.
Okay. A couple of other things that I want to bring up about 2025 budget for not necessarily a decision on everything, but things for the board to start considering and talking about. First of all, moving forward into 2025, any merit increases for the employees, whether or not the board's in favor of carrying forward the 4% that we weren't successful with last year on the default for 2025. So I just have to sort of set those marching orders for the department heads so we know how to calculate wage lines moving forward. So I'm not sure if that's something the board is in agreement with, or that is something I kind of
To
need to
move forward with that, yeah, you need to do that in order to
Right.
get your preparations done,
Mhm.
in order to go with the, it was the 4% merit.
Yes, that's what was approved
that was
last year,
approved
but
last
we,
year.
Personally, I'm all for it. Personally.
I would recommend running the numbers on a 3% as well, just so that we can have a comparison. See what the impact is.
Okay. Yeah, okay,
okay.
sounds good.
The other thing, and like I said, this one is more food for thought moving forward. So currently we've started to receive a significant amount of our FEMA funding from the floods last year. So right now we currently have received $531,303.74. We are earmarked before the end of the year to roughly receive another another 200,000. So we have three more. They're broken up into different categories. We have three more categories. One is roughly 177,000. The other one of them is 14 and one I believe is in the 30s. I don't have the exact numbers on those because we haven't received them, but we've been noticed that we were awarded. So when we receive those, I will get the total printout. The reason I bring that up right now is something to think about for the board. Because along the lines of the budget season, we will start talking about whether or not the board wants to allocate any money from the fund balance to offset either warrant articles or offset the operating budget as a means to lower the tax rate or offset any increases. This money that comes in from FEMA, as we know, we bore the cost of the floods through, you know, our operating budget. That's what we're required to do. Some of this money is from the December 2022 flood. So all of this comes in from FEMA. It automatically goes into the fund balance. So a lot of that money came out of our DPW and also came out of road reconstruction. So one of the proposals I'll be bringing forward to the board, and again, I don't need an answer right now, it's just something to start thinking about. Is that when we have the total amount of the FEMA money, about putting a warrant article together for the town to consider putting that money from FEMA back into road reconstruction to replenish the money that was spent on the floods. But that will help offset whatever the request is this year for road reconstruction. As you know, this year it was 1.4 million, I believe, 1.45. So roughly $750,000 would offset that
Right.
significantly.
Yes.
And that's all, you know, obviously that all goes into the composition of the tax rate. And then the other thing for the board to consider is whether or not I'll have an exact number for you when we come, but looking at the audit, and where we're at roughly, we're up to approximately $4.7 million in the fund balance. And I will have the breakdown from, as you know, from DRA has a breakdown of 17% is the max that a community can hold in their fund balance. Then it has a breakdown of how healthy you are based on the percentage. We've always operated right around the 10% or more. We are now creeping up to that 17%. And the reason we have that is having a healthy fund balance increases the town's bond rating. So that if we were to bond something, our bond rating would be premium as to, you know, fetching the best rate that we could. We don't have any bonds on the horizon right now, but like I said, I will bring an exact breakdown of the percentage
Yeah, I'd like
coming.
to see a
Yeah,
breakdown.
I have it every year when
Yep.
it comes down after everything is inputted to the DRA portal. We get those breakdown sheets and I can bring them to the board during the budget season.
Mhm.
But just to get your mind thinking about it ahead of time, so it's not sprung on
Right.
you in a meeting or whatnot. I just thought it was a good time to bring it up,
It's helpful.
mention it, get it out for the community to think about as well. And then we can have more discussions about it during the budget process.
Well, most definitely. Thank
So,
you.
All right, that's all I got for the.
Ryan, quick question, Dave. There are no limitations from FEMA on what those funds can be used for, are there?
No,
Thank you.
they're all considered reimbursement for the monies that we put back out. That's why there's really no restriction on what they can be used for, because we had to pull money from every area we could
Just
to cover those repairs.
Okay, thank you very much. Changing phone service providers.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was presented with this proposal by the IT manager. So currently you'll see I had him break it down in a email so that the board could look at it. Currently right now we use Nextiva, and we're paying roughly $390 per month. They've increased their prices last year by $100 a month. The IT manager has explored SkyTel and has previously had good luck with them. Their pricing is based on usage, but based on our usage averages, we would be paying roughly $250 a month versus the $390. He feels that the increase or the decrease could be even slightly more depending on winter months versus summer months, things like that. So Based on those averages, he could not give a definitive number because it's usage based, but our averages suggest that there would be a significant savings by swapping over.
Is he familiar with SkyTel?
Yes.
And is there any cost associated with retaining the phone numbers?
No, no. The other thing that he did put on some back information too, I think this prompted not only the increase in cost, but he also, Nextiva, there's no longer support for Nextiva as a back-end provider. This came to light because we ran into problems with our landline that connects, it's a 3752 number from the police department that goes directly to Belknap County Dispatch. That's a unique line because of the transfer to Laconia. And they ran into problems, and because it was unsupported, they've been having troubles getting tech support with that to get it resolved.
And he thinks this switch will fix that.
He said the switch, we're utilizing this system, we will have that
Better.
back-end support.
Okay. All right.
Exactly what we're paying for.
That's,
knows
so
what he's
that's what
doing.
he knows
He
what he's
knows what
doing,
he's
so, I'll make a motion
Yeah.
to authorize, Josh Monaco, our IT director, to switch from Nextiva to SkyTel based on the information provided by Mr. Monaco, for the fee of $250 per month.
Second that.
That's gotta be an
Think
approximate
it's
fee.
Up to,
Roughly,
Based on-
approximately based on his information of $250 a month or less.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, old business. Swap shop discussion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I got kind of a swap shop odyssey here that I can go through if you wish. Based on previous discussions with the board, I undertook to do some swap shop investigations. I'm aware of 12 towns in the state that have swap shops. All of them are at their landfills. There may be others that I'm not aware of. I undertook to do some visits. I visited 8 of the 12. One of them in Jaffrey was not operating due to a major construction project at the landfill center. They elected not to operate this year. 7 of 8 had enclosures of various sizes. And for staffing, which is one of our major questions, I found that 5 of the 8 were staffed entirely by volunteers, typically a group of 12 to 30 residents. One, the town of Chester, was actually staffed by the town, and that was made possible because the shop's proximity to the main building was such, it was right across the road. They have one major recycling center building. It's always staffed with at least 3 people. So one of the 3 would undertake to keep an eye on the swap shop, and that worked well for them. In one town, I found, Bedford, they actually leased their swap shop to a private operator who receives the donations and then resells them. I don't think that would be popular with the residents, but it seems to work for Bedford. And Jaffrey, the one that is closed currently, is operated by the Chamber of Commerce. Scheduling, they typically do by email, or I got information on a couple of free online scheduling softwares, which at first glance looked to be pretty straightforward, and I think they would work. The most common arrangement for volunteers is typically a 2 or 3 hour shift, and they try to have 2 volunteers per shift. The hours were all over the place with towns, but most commonly were a couple of days a week, regardless of how long the actual recycling center was open, and typically for 4 to 6 hours per day on the days that they operated. And most of them did not operate in the winter months. They would run from early April until mid-October and then shut down for the winter. They all had donation restrictions, and they, from what I could see, they were all pretty much common sense. Televisions and electronics, stuffed toys, stuffed furniture, child safety items, chemicals, skis, ski boots, snowboards. I won't go through the whole list here, but I was able to gather a good deal of information from several of the organizations that ran these places. And the list is pretty much all common sense items. I did come across one having to do with any toy or device capable of launching a projectile, which I wouldn't have thought about initially, but I can see where it's probably not a bad idea. Their operating rules, again, they're pretty much common sense. They only allow residents with landfill stickers to donate to the swap shop. They typically will have a browsing time limit, 15 to 30 minutes, to avoid a situation where you have someone that just comes to hang around all day and see what they might be able to obtain as soon as it shows up. The items are all reviewed by a volunteer on hand, and the volunteers have the okay to reject any item for any reason. Usually it's because it's either on the unsafe list or because it's soiled or damaged or has some other objectionable quality. Items that carry a disposal fee, if you were to dispose of them at the landfill, that fee has to be paid before you donate the item to the swap shop. And in that way, no one can avoid the landfill disposal fee simply by dumping it off at the swap shop. Donated items can be reviewed periodically and are usually, and after some period of time, if an item is not selected by someone to pick up and use, they then dispose of, obviously, in the landfill. And most towns will not allow items to be taken for resale, although I did come across one town that encouraged it, and their justification was, our objective is to keep the stuff out of the landfill, and if somebody can do that and help us do it by selling the stuff, that's good, more power to them. But I think generally, residents would not take well to the idea that they donate something and somebody else retrieves it, and then they see their item on YouTube or website or some other sales site. I think considerations for Alton, based on what I've heard, an enclosure is certainly desirable. My wife and I just relocated in Alton, I think, in the last year that the swap shop, the current one, was open. And as I recall, it was essentially just a couple of tables out in the open, and that is difficult to control. One of the advantages of an enclosure, other than having the goods protected, is that there are no security issues. If you don't have help, or if there's a reason why you don't want to operate, you simply close and lock the doors, and everything inside is protected. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. This any better? Oh. You got the speaker at a swap shop. The best location, based on my discussions with Scotty down at the landfill, is the relatively low area that is flat, that's south of the open recycling dumpster bins where they accept construction debris and metals. I have to say that in talking with Scotty, he regards the swap shop as something of an inconvenience, but he appreciates the benefits and seemed to be open to the possibility. There are other locations there that are possible, but that one, which has an access road close to it and has a flat area of land, and that access road can be blocked off, seemed like a reasonable place for a location. We would not require security if the structure is closed and locked. We could install wireless cameras with recorders or with a monitor that is inside the recycling center offices if necessary. I don't think it would be, but it would not be costly to do so. That location would not have power unless we ran power to it. And some of the towns that accept small appliances do so because they actually run them to make sure they're okay before accepting them. And of course, if we didn't have power, we couldn't do that. Having said that, an underground power line with UF cable is relatively inexpensive and could be installed. I took a shot at capital costs. A 12 by 20 shed, I got quotes from Alton Motorsports, and we use several of their sheds other places in town. typically $8,500 to $10,000. Site preparation, which wouldn't amount to much, I don't believe, and probably could be done by the DPW. $500. Cameras and power, if we needed power, $1,000. And I looked at possible funding sources, and here we have some accounts that are currently available that have other purposes having to do with the landfill. And I don't know the ins and outs of the legalities of using them if they could be used. So that would require further examination. Or we could do a warrant article, a separate warrant article, maybe perhaps on the order of $12,000 to $14,000 just for the swap shop facility. I think we may have some other fund sources available, but I have not explored that to any great degree. We talked about operating costs because there was a lot of concern that volunteers will not work and will have to staff them. So I just ran a typical estimate here with a couple of 6-hour days per week for half of the year at $24 an hour. Would amount to about $7,500 a year in staffing costs. But based on what I've learned from the other towns, I don't believe that formal staffing will be necessary. I also made just a quick note here. If we ever wanted to just try a real short-term trial, we might consider renting some fencing, putting up some tables and a pop-top canopy, and just see how things went. That wouldn't involve any great long-term investment or any permanent facility, and might give us some background information on how to proceed. Otherwise, I just made some general comments here. The shops that I visited had very enthusiastic volunteers and a very steady flow of customers. In fact, a couple of the town landfills told me they get more customers for the swap shop than they do for the landfill. The feedback was that they're very popular with the public. People I talked to appreciated them. People particularly appreciate that items that they have that are still good but no longer needed by them are not going to get tossed, but can be of value to someone else. Most, but not all, most of the volunteers were seniors and retired people, and they seemed to appreciate the opportunity to participate, contribute back to the town, and enjoy the social interaction. And as a general rule, I found the relations between the volunteers and the professional staff at these swap shop and landfill facilities was overall very positive. So I don't think that we're looking at any kind of issues that we could not overcome. It certainly will take some effort, and probably the key to it will be support from the town and gathering enough willing volunteers to make the thing work. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I appreciate you listening to me ramble on.
Well, thank you for your research
Sure.
and your dedication to doing that.
Maybe I should run for another term right now.
One question that I have is in your report and your findings, I don't see too much information as far as what the other towns had to say about their insurance.
Most of the towns I found, I was a little surprised because pretty much everybody, I guess I should have known this, but I didn't, everybody uses Primex. It's almost like they've got a monopoly. The only person that didn't was the guy who leases the swap shop from the town, and he got his own insurance from a private supplier. I have to assume that because Primex carries the insurance, they didn't raise any overwhelming objections. I wouldn't be surprised if they came through and said, you really should do this and be careful about that. But just like the Primex gentleman that we mentioned, met when we did our on-site visit, they were generally, I wouldn't say overly supportive. They didn't say, I can't wait till you get a swap shop open, but they also didn't offer any staggering objections, if you will. And I recognize there's a risk. Certainly we know there's a risk because we had a lawsuit because of someone that was injured. And I have to tell you,
That's a concern.
yes, it is.
The major
Yeah,
concern.
yeah. And But I have to say, I think we face that kind of risk in any town operation. And just a couple of weeks ago, I went to the landfill and I had a bunch of brush. My wife is a pruner extraordinaire, and she managed to fill half the truck up with brush. And I took it up to the brush area and I docked it off, and there was brush all over the place on the ground. And I got back on my truck and I had a phone call, so I was on the phone for a while. And I realized, I've been here like 15 minutes now. There is nobody around. If I fell down and landed on a sharp, piece of brush, I'd have the same exposure. I think there's some risk that we can't avoid, but I think we can minimize.
Is there a camera back there? Where the brush is. Isn't there a visible?
Can't confirm that
Okay,
myself.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I do know there are cameras
That-
around there.
know,
I just don't
I
know.
thought there was one in the back there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Of all the ones you visited that had, they all had structures on them. Were they like a shed style setup, like what all motorsports had, or were they permanent buildings?
Well, there were a couple of them that were just plain garages. There were two that I can recall that were sheds. And there was one that was a big barn that the swap shop had a small section of that was closed off separately, had its own doors.
The area that you mentioned, and that southerly section of where you were thinking of putting this building, that's also in the area where the dumpsters come in and out with the loader going in and out, so that has to go in there continuously back and forth in that area with the loader. So it's not quite so easy to get in and out of that area when that's in operation during the day. It's used every day when those dumpsters are filled, they're dragged out, they're pulled, the trucks come and they take them away, they drop off the new ones. So it's going back and forth when they're full. So the loader's in there all the time. Plus, when they are full, and if they don't have a refill yet, the loader has to go in there and pile up the rubbish, if you will, until another dumpster comes, then he has to transfer that all into it.
Right, yeah.
So
Yeah, Scotty,
Continuously moving in there.
he described that to me. He thought that it was a workable situation, but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Okay. How's it
So,
going, Andrew? So that's another concern, that I have,
Yep.
with that area.
and I think there are other locations
Mhm.
at the landfill that we could make work. That was just the one that he thought would be best for him. And since he lives there,
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I know that the Primex, if you will, they have their concerns of what is acceptable to have in a swap shop. And they do not suggest any electrical items for liability reasons.
Mhm.
Whether you plug in and it works, you're basically letting something go, and if something happens to it later down the road, who's liable?
My biggest concern would be the facility, would be trying to construct a facility and
Mhm.
being able to flow of traffic and everything like that as to where it would go, like you had mentioned,
Mhm.
but also what type of structure we put up there. I mean, I understand a shed is probably most economical, but at the same point, I mean, how long is that gonna last there, traffic in and out, that type of thing. What would we put it on? And, our biggest concern being is if it was to be in that spot, is that loader is always moving in and out
That's
there,
what I'm saying.
always moving in and out there.
I'm very concerned about that spot because again, the loader backing up and going back and forth in that area and if there's other people in that area, that's a major concern.
That being said, though, I do like the idea is if it's something the town truly wants to do, and if it's something that we can get Primex to get on board with, if it
Mhm.
were to be proposed, correct me if I'm wrong, if it were to be proposed in a warrant article to appropriate funds specifically
Mhm.
for that, that if the town votes for it, it goes into effect, but if the town votes it down, then it's, the townspeople didn't want it, right?
Correct.
Correct,
But we
yes,
can't allow a certain amount of money in a line item for that to be
to
constructed.
put in a warrant article.
Right. I would add, just to, Dick's comment about the funding. I do know that, the establish use of the solid waste revolving fund or the recycling fund. The recycling fund's not a CRF. That's a revolving fund. Can't be utilized for that purpose. But the other thing is the CRF, the capital reserve for the recycling center, has a specific defined use. And it wouldn't include being able to utilize those funds for the swap shop. There's a specific definition for it, so. So funding would have to be allocated specifically for that purpose. And I think the last time we spoke, which I mean, it's totally up to the board and how you want to proceed, but it would make sense that, it's one of those things you put out to the town.
Out to the town.
Based
what I
on
would
the
suggest.
information and the homework that's been done and put out there that, the board can, establish, or the public can bring something forward at a meeting as to what we want to establish, or for a building or a structure
Mhm.
or whatnot, to determine a rough approximate cost, whether it be the shed, whether it be to define something. There's a lot of
And
good
staffing.
preliminary.
Yeah.
Yes.
And staffing.
Staffing. is a big problem.
Volunteers, I mean, it works in a lot of areas and everything, but a lot of the times when the volunteers go home and it's done, and there's a lot of things that are left, it has to be thrown away, it's staff.
Mhm.
And staff, the things that don't sit there, that sits there too long, that needs to be tossed away, that's what the staff people will do, and restocking and taking things back out. I think this needs to go to the people for a vote. I agree
Again,
with
it
that.
needs to be considered, and it needs to be understood that we were open to a lawsuit prior to.
Mhm.
So I
That's what our
understand, I
concerns are.
understand what you're saying about the brush pile and stuff like that. That makes sense. But this would be, the brush pile is a necessity to the town. We need it. You know what I mean? It has to be, it's got to be there. You know what I mean? But this would be, in addition to. So my biggest concern again is that we were open to liability before, and it was taken advantage of. Somebody, put forth a lawsuit and won. So that being said, we're still gonna be open to the exact same situation that we were prior to. That's my concern as far as the insurance goes.
And again, I think the list of items that can't be brought to the swap shop and used, I think should be a little bit more extended to almost saying, okay, what you do accept. Not what you don't, what some of the things you do accept. There's a lot of stuff here that is not acceptable for a swap shop. And it really limits to how much is it really worth it? By the time a lot of these items are excluded, what's left?
The,
Yeah, this is true. There are some things, yes. But there's a lot of electronic things and a lot of electronics and things that can't be, that we've had before in the past. I just think it needs definitely to go back out to the people. There are definitely concerns with liability. And I still think that you can still have a few volunteers, but still going to need staffing and people of staff to work with the volunteers.
one of the things, as I listened to this discussion, that, there were two of the towns, that had an arrangement with the on-site staff where they had a small, I don't know if you want to call it a mini dumpster or some such thing. The town staff people would just bring it down and spot it next to the stop shop.
Mhm.
And whatever they had that they felt was, just wasn't being picked up and had been on hand for a while, they just tossed into that thing and then the guys hauled it away. Didn't seem to be a big issue for them. I'm sure it's one more step they got to take.
Mhm.
As far as liability, and this is just me personally talking, I just get worn out from hearing that I can't do anything because I'm going to get sued. And, I go to the library, I could trip over a stack of books. If I had a kid that played baseball, he could twist his ankle going around first. And anybody with an enterprising attorney
Mhm.
can sue us and probably win.
It's just always a concern.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
have to be aware of it and
And do
to
everything
make
you
a
can to
concern.
minimize it. You can't make it go away.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to uh, eh, speak to what Dick was just saying about the added liability or whatnot and during the conversations with Primex. One of the concerns is, oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? Sorry. Lean forward. Like Dick said, and I agree totally that you can be sued for anything and you have liability in anywhere, and especially in town government. I will say the issue here is if you read the lawsuit, and it is on file down in the clerk's office, and the allegations and what they were successful with, the town is exposed to increased liability because they allege negligence on the part of the town. So if we don't correct the areas that were addressed in the claim, then we are even more exposed to that negligent claim, because not only did we lose the suit,
Yeah, it contributory negligence. I think that there are opportunities at that site that beyond that location that you pointed out. And I think you highlighted one of them when you just talked about how being up in the brush area and nobody came for 15 minutes. So if we're worried about a high traffic area is a bad place to put it, maybe a low traffic area is a better place to put it. Obviously power would be much more difficult up there.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what? Right, yeah. Oh, there is power already heading up that. Perfect. Yes.
We
So
can't.
we're not
can't
open
do
to public
public
input right
every-
now.
Yeah, so what I would like to do is offer, I mean, Dick's already done a great deal of homework. I'd like to offer to work with you, Dick, maybe, and we can chart out a solid plan here to present for a warrant article.
Do you have any idea what you're stepping into?
I have a suspicion.
Well, I think a lot of the work that Dick has done has been good and done a good job with it.
Very
Very thorough, and it's commendable. I think basically, I think the board should do another review as a whole board, to go out there and do another review and together look at the various spots that are possible
Okay,
and go out there. In my opinion, I think this is something at this point, for further discussion to go to the site.
So if it
Yeah.
goes through for a warrant article, we have a
That's
definite
correct.
position.
We have a
where we're gonna
definite
put-
place where something could go, what we're gonna do, how we're gonna staff it, what we need, and talk to Primex again. Not necessarily meet them out there this time. This is for us, and then devise the wording for the warrant article to go through and put it back to the people. Do you want this or don't you?
Put an
I think
accurate-
that's the fair way of doing it, and that's,
Yeah,
that
I
would be
think
fair. for
that
the
would
town.
also give us a definite cost analysis of what it's gonna be. Again, with the staffing, I understand, volunteers are volunteers, and we
Mhm.
willingly, obviously, we, adore
Fantastic,
volunteers.
That's great,
But we would definitely need to have some sort of, relationship with the transfer station and the guys up there, so that if, volunteers, people get sick, things happen, you know what I mean? To be able to have something to fall back on where, we have a backup plan. You know what I mean?
think of a date.
But yeah, I think we should do that, and we should figure out the exact cost, and then we'll figure out a spot, and then put a warrant article together
you
and
have to determine.
go from there. That way, at least we could say, hey, we'd like to appropriate, 25,000, be able to put the building, the electric, if they want to do cameras, they want to do shelving inside the shed, there's
Right.
different cost incurrences, and then we
My
go from there.
suggestion is that let's get together, go there, look at it, and come up with
Concrete
a
spot.
good solution for a warrant article.
yep, I think we've got a good idea now of what other communities in New Hampshire do.
Mhm.
And I think that now we need to look at our site specific.
Yes.
And address it
Yeah.
that way. And I think what I was volunteering is maybe we can, a smaller group than the entire board can work through some of those details before we bring the entire board out and say, option A, option B.
Right.
Just my thought.
Yeah, and I think that's what we should do.
good.
And I'd like to research, I was pretty sure that there was a camera out back in,
Oh, sure, I
in,
can-
in the,
It doesn't
in the,
matter,
in the
it's
brush
something
area.
that should
Th-
be.
There should be,
there should be a
something back there, so
camera.
if somebody does fall, get hurt, or something, some accident happens out back there, but I was pretty sure there already was one, and I don't know if it's monitored all the time.
Regardless of,
Yeah.
I agree there,
Yeah.
and we should
Yeah.
also, this should have, cameras out there.
Mhm.
This should definitely have cameras out there.
So if we're in agreement to that, I
Absolutely.
move that that's what we pick a date in the near future that we can get together and go out there.
How much time do you guys think you need to put together to set a date for all of us to go out there? If the two of you want to, do it out of the gate, and then do you want us all to meet together? Or would you like to do it, the two of you, and then meet, we'll all go out there together, or what would you guys like to do?
Probably easier for just Drew and I to go out there and scout around a little bit. and
Okay.
So you think-
contact Scotty and have him
Yeah,
give us his
that's fine.
thoughts, and then we'll approach the board and we'll make sure we don't get a day when it's pouring rain like last.
Mhm.
Two meetings from now, do you think, a month?
Sure, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Works for me.
That
Excellent.
works. All right, thank
Awesome
you.
job, Mr. Shea.
So I
Very
can set
nice.
the agenda 2 meetings from now to discuss it again in here, or do you want to do a site
I'll
walk?
do a site walk,
Do a site walk.
Sidewalk.
Do a site walk? Okay.
Yeah.
probably before the meeting again, like we
Yeah,
did last
Yeah,
time.
and we'll do a site walk. We'll
Thank
go
you.
down there, we'll meet, we'll discuss what you guys have come up with and see if there's any other input from any of the board members.
That'll give us time before
Yeah.
budget season 2 to put together figures, yeah.
All right. Thank you again.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, selectmen reports. Drew?
I have nothing to report.
Dick, anything?
Yeah, we had our monthly hazardous waste meeting last Wednesday, and they had another drop off in Wolfboro on Saturday, and all has going well in that program. In the case of the milfoil committee, we've had some really good results insofar as portions of the Merry Meeting River that were expected to need treatment did not. And so the dollars involved there will no longer be consumed unless we find some other area, and we don't expect to. And the diving work that they do for harvesting the milfoil off the bottom of the lake has been complete, and there again took less than what we expected, and so might help our budget going forward a little bit, and that was really good news.
Thank you. Andy?
I have nothing.
We had my planning board meeting last week. It went very well. We have a lot of short-term rental applications coming through. Obviously, we saw them tonight,
Mhm.
different reasons and, so forth. I would like to just, make a note that, these meetings, planning board, I have my ZAC committee meeting tomorrow night. But at these meetings, I would like to point out that there are a lot of people on the various boards and both in public that, you need to understand that they are, they're there trying to do a service. So when they are, saying that, something needs to be done as way permits or anything like that, there's a reason that they're saying it. So the, women that run downstairs, like I said, the, building inspector and everything need to be treated with the utmost respect. And I don't feel necessarily that they're getting it. So, just, I wanted to bring it up in a selectman meeting that, I really wish that some people would adjust their attitudes based on how they treat the employees of the town, the volunteers of the town. And I just think, that should be noted.
Thank
And
you.
that's all I got.
Thank you. Well, the ZBA met on July 11th. We had 2 special exceptions that were approved. We had 1 administrative appeal that was approved. 2 continuances, 1 in a variance and 1 in a special exception. That was on July 11th. And the master plan implementation committee met for the first meeting last Wednesday. And it's off to a good start. We had discussion, and also all the board members were voted on and chosen. We have the chairperson here right now. But it all went well, and getting started, the next meeting will be in September 24th, I think it is, will be the next meeting, and slowly going over all the master plan items. And that's all I have. Town administrator.
Thank you, Mr.
Reports.
Chairman. The first thing I wanted to bring back up from last meeting was to try to get a confirmation for the Old Home Day Parade invitation for August 10th at 11:30. I got to respond back to the ABA sort of with a tentative number and whether or not we want to be riding or walking.
Mhm.
So I wasn't sure if the board members had had a chance to check their schedules and I could get a sort of a consensus.
I'll be there with a
I'll be there with a car.
I'll be there
With a car?
with a car.
Ah, right.
Okay.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
You all set to come?
Count me in.
What's that?
Okay, he says, count me in.
Sure. All right.
Andy?
Yep.
You all set?
Okay.
All right. I will respond with that. The other thing the town clerk had, asked me to mention to the board tonight that, the town clerk and the moderator would like to invite a few members of the board if they're available. Again, unfortunately, it's a few members of the board because we can't have a quorum there. But the upcoming Voting Works training for the new voting machines is going to be held on Friday, August 23rd, from 9 to approximately 1 PM in the town hall on the upstairs conference room. So if any of the board members would like to attend, or check it out, welcome to. If you're gonna go or whatnot, if you want to coordinate or let me know or Stacy know, and then we can just make sure we know who's going and who's
Okay,
not.
yeah.
I'll be there for
Yeah.
that one.
So. All right,
Okay.
that's that one. And the last thing I have is, circulated among the tables. But I wanted to, bring it up under TA reports. So before, the DPW Director, Scott Kidman, had moved on, and we hired another one, I received a letter of commendation, on behalf of, Rebecca Luponi and Jack Housel. Scott Kidman, had specifically cited in his letter about the exemplary work that they did over the past few years, not to mention the past 4 months, and during which time they were the primary contact for the DPW staff while we were going through the transition of the DPW director. Also citing their work, their extraordinary work that was done on the 2 federally declared disasters and documenting and accounting for the damage caused by the floods. Apologize there for a minute. So the letters that were circulated were drafted on behalf of the Board of Selectmen to become part of the employee's permanent file and sent to them as well.
I think it's a good idea. I think that's fantastic.
All right,
Good.
and that's,
Yep.
yep. I'll send those back.
Yeah, and.
Thank you.
Okay,
And that's all I have.
okay, approval of the minutes for June 25th, 2024, public session.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 25th, 2024, public session.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, approval of the minutes for July 9th, 2024, public session.
We'll make a motion, we approve the July 9th, 2024 public session.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda for July 23rd, 2024 as presented.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no requests this evening,
No.
and we'll open to public input or any of the agenda, not just the agenda items or anything at this time. Come on up.
Thank you.
Do I need to turn this on?
No, that's on. Just state your name and speak clearly.
My name's Jill Hauser. I have 2 topics I want to briefly speak on. One is, it was my understanding there was at least 1, if not 2, trustees of Levy Park that were going to be approved prior to this meeting. So I have no idea what the paper flow is on that, but if someone could look into it. They should be
Not that I
floating
know of.
around.
We just,
something.
Yeah, it actually-
by approving the consent agenda, they're,
Yeah, it was on the consent agenda.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, so
you're
All
good
right.
there.
appreciate that.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Yep, it's right there.
The other
Levy
one
Park
is,
trustees, yep.
not surprisingly, swap shop, 3 quick points. Absolutely respect and rely on you, the town employees and Board of Selectmen, to figure out the most conservative, frugal, yet, way to do that, and meet the needs of the folks as well as the town. So I appreciate all the effort, Richard and Andrew. Thank you for coming
Mostly
on
him.
board.
Told
Um,
him.
I would ask you to take a deeper dive and check the language, any capital improvement funds, like if there's existing monies that would be allowable to just, double check and make sure that gets, if there's some way that the cost to the taxpayers can be reduced, if there's money that can be used. Second, Lee has an excellent training manual. And I would ask you to figure out how to do that interface if you do use. All right, if you, just to help figure out the easiest way to have
Mhm.
volunteers trained
Mhm.
and interface with the town employees at the transfer station. And that was it.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kelly Sullivan. Mr. Shea, thank you for all of your legwork you did in researching the swap shop. It's greatly appreciated. To know that the people really asked for that and you took that upon yourself to go out and do that is greatly appreciated. As well as everybody serving on the board. We do realize it's volunteer. I've said this many times before. I've sat on many different boards myself. It's almost a thankless position. Usually only hear from people if there's a problem. Okay, so I have one question about the swap shop. To my knowledge, it was here when I moved to town 20 years ago. Is that true? How long is the swap shop, was the swap shop here before COVID?
Boy, it's
A long
it's
time.
close to it's close to 20 years.
So the lawsuit that happened, so was that won or was that settled?
Say that again, please.
There was a lawsuit that
Yes,
was
there
brought
was.
against the town in reference to the swap shop.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if it went all the way and it was won, or if it was settled before it went into court.
It was settled by Primex.
Okay.
And it was one. It was one person.
Right, I meant
Oh,
one as in who,
she
like,
wanted to know
a
if-
bad,
Oh, was it
like,
one?
was
Did
it one?
it go to trial?
Yes, yes. So
I
like
thought you were
win-lose,
asking if there was
win-lose.
more
No,
than
I'm
one.
sorry.
I thought,
No,
I
I
thought
was
there was more than
wondering-
one case.
Yes, no.
Okay.
So understand that there was a lawsuit brought. I think it really doesn't matter if it was the swap shop or not. To Mr. Shea's point, and again, this is just a personal, you're gonna have that person, they were gonna sue at the swap shop or, on a slip and fall out in front of town hall, right? That has less to do with where it happened as opposed to who it happened to. So seeing the outreach of the townspeople, and I appreciate, again, the effort. We've been up here a few times. It's a little disappointing that you want to send it to a warrant article. I'm not going to lie, simply because we've had that swap shop for many, many years, 20 years as far as I know, possibly even longer. And because one bad apple, we now have to
Lawsuits change everything, everything.
again, I think you can't let one bad apple ruin everything, right? And I
understand that, but
think
there could be more than
it's
one.
kind of like people flying airplanes into a tall building. Are we never gonna put up a tall building again? No, right? And so just to put it out there, I'm just a little disappointed we want to put it to a warrant article because I don't think you've seen that I can recall, anything that has brought anybody out more than the swap shop, whether it's on Facebook, at the coffee shop, down at McDonald's, at the Circle gas station, people are talking about the swap shop. It is something that they want, and I don't think you have seen anybody in the entire town come together over something like this to want it to go through as much as the swap shop. So knowing all that, just wanted to say that I was a little disappointed that we want to put it off and put it to a warrant and try to have to come up with funds and kind of make a mountain out of a molehill for something that we've previously had.
So.
And again, I
In
take
lieu of
into,
saying it, in lieu of saying it though, the mountain out of a molehill, we did, I know we've said it a bunch of times, we did have to go to default budget this year. That being said, you know, we were not able to give the town employees their raises this year, but we're gonna appropriate the funds to be able to put up a swap shop, and we couldn't give the people that are gonna be doing the work for the swap shop their raises for the year due to a default budget. That's why.
and I understand that. I was at a couple of board meetings when we discussed employee wages, and I know that we could have given a 3%. Instead, we went with the 4%. That was the town's choice. We went to default budget. So there's a lot of different things there.
Absolutely.
We're
And again, I'm not,
approaching
and I'm not
finance,
saying,
Kelly.
and I'm not saying, you know, not, I'm just saying in the grand scheme of the whole town running, the swap shop is not a large portion. And again, it had already been pre-existing. That's all I wanted.
It's
to
not a
say.
large portion. It was pre-existing. We still have to side on the side of caution. for
I
anything.
understand.
That's
Yeah,
all.
no, I
That's all.
understand.
And it's
And I,
actually
and I
just going out,
understand that.
just going back out to the people. And I think going out to a warrant article makes sense. And in my opinion,
And that's.
and going out and then find out if
and
everybody
and
really,
That's fine.
really wants to
I
have
was
this.
just here to
Okay?
say I was a little
That's-
disappointed.
that's our time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kelly.
Kelly.
Doesn't agree, I suppose.
Thank you.
Hi, I really appreciate you looking into it. Can you hear? Oh, Joan Blackwood, sorry. Okay, I see there's two main things going on. One I need to talk about with Scotty, but the other one is you guys worried about negligence, because that's the key word there. If there's negligence, we could be sued again, correct?
Mhm.
Now, the swap shop that I dealt the most with was Lee, New Hampshire. And they have two people always there or they close it. One person is there for intake so that they kind of look over what's coming in and they can say, I'm sorry, we can't take that. It might be dangerous or something like that. The other person is organizing and making sure that it's a safe area to be in. And if they aren't there, it closes. And if you hire someone, I know that you wanted at one point to bring in someone that would be from the transfer station. That's one person. One person cannot take intake and clean up the mess. I know that years ago, or before the swap shop closed, there were two wonderful volunteers. Unfortunately, they had to be there like, I don't know, 8 hours. They were there here, there, and everywhere, and a lot of times not there. But if you have two volunteers that work 2 hours in a shift, I'd be one. I'm old, but I would love to be one. Number one, I'm a treasure seeker. So, I mean, it'd be so much fun to see what's coming in. You'd have to limit me with what I could take home, okay? And so I really feel like the volunteers would work. You would have to make sure that you've got enough, that they're steady, that there's a lot of senior citizens in town that really want to be used somewhere. They're not used anywhere. They'd love to get together and see people, even if it's only once a month. In Lee, they're required to work 2 hours a month. And they have 30 volunteers. And you can do that if you want them there all the time. No, you can't do that. But 2 hours a month, oh man, I'd love to do that. Anyway, so that's the negligence can be handled by people. And they also work with the transfer people to like, Richard said, how that they have a container and they've even been warned, don't throw things away if someone's looking at you. In other words, that person might think that the item is valuable. Everybody has their own opinion as to what is valuable. But if something's been there for 3 or 4 weeks, it needs to go. It needs to be emptied. That was the problem with the swap shop before. It wasn't emptied enough. There was too much junk, too much clutter. And because of that, stuff ended up on the ground. And so if you have 2 people there and they're volunteers and they're working with the transfer people to organize and put stuff out of the building, behind the building that's going to be taken away at the end of the day or something, you can clear that up, and they do that at Lee. And you can close it and people cannot put, stuff there. That's the other item that I know that bothers Scotty at the transfer station. I asked him, I said, what is your main problem? He says, the main problem is people leaving stuff there that should not be left there, that should be either be paid for or is so much clutter that it doesn't get cleaned up in time. And he said, one of my employees worked 2 hours one day to clean up the mess that was left there. So you have people there, you have them telling, all right, time, we need to empty this stuff. You can fix it up. You can make it so that Scott doesn't feel like he is overwhelmed with the extra stuff that might come in. And I hesitate to say this, but men don't see an awful lot of stuff that they might want to pick up at the swap shop. Tools aren't allowed that are sharp, okay? Things that would attract a man, big tools, they aren't there. And so the only men that I have seen that love swap shops would be for resale. They'll buy stuff and they'll resell it. But your wives have furnished your houses with swap shop stuff, I betcha, or your or your girlfriends or whatever you want to call it. So I mean, I had
Time.
yeah.
But thank you very much.
Anyway,
Thank you.
yeah, forgive me for being sexist, but it does kind of,
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. My name is Robin Masteller, and I can answer Joan's question because my husband took everything out of that swap shop. So please don't tell me that men aren't interested. When I brought a lot of his things back, there were gentlemen there with their trucks wide open to take them back. So I just wanted to stress, you do need to think about the town and how the town can get hurt. But at the same time, we have to make sure that everybody here enjoys and benefits from this town. And that's how a lot of us feel about this swap shop. If we, without just saying it's a swap shop, we have a ball field, we have town docks, we have all sorts of places that people can get hurt. You're not going to take all those away because there will be a lawsuit, maybe not in my lifetime, but there will be to those places. So I'm just cautioning that we need to be careful about letting other people run this town's life. The other question, you don't really even need to answer me. The swap shop has been open since about 2003, because that's when I moved here. And that's when my husband started going. So my question is, the guys, and I've known a lot of them that have worked there, and they're very friendly and very capable and very helpful. Their job, which I would assume it's fun, but I'm sure it's not to them, is to pick up that big bucket loader, take the stuff that's there at the end of the weekend, and they had to get rid of it. We could help sort it so that they go easier into the right piles. That could be part of a volunteer shift. And somebody said that they don't have the time. I don't know what happened with that time because they did a lot of work on those weekends, but I don't know what they're doing now. I'm not even looking for an answer, that we don't have some hours if the volunteers helped to sort what has to be moved. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Good evening, I'm Ruth Larson. Thank you very much for your work on doing the research for the swap shop. It's been really helpful. I do want all of you to look at this as an opportunity for the town, not a problem to be faced. It's something that the town generally has shown tremendous amount of enthusiasm for. And I want us to look forward on this and figure out a way to do it and not look at the potential liabilities of negligence law as something that keeps us from doing something that your constituents want very much. I'm a retired lawyer. I spent my career defending cases for insurance companies involving slip and fall accidents and other kinds of accidents. So I've seen that people can sue. My impression of New Hampshire is people are much less litigious here than most places. If you use the fear of liability for a reason not to do what you want to do otherwise, and a reason not to conduct your life normally, you don't invite guests over to your home, you don't drive anywhere, you don't walk into a building, or you don't allow people to come into a building, you make people sign a waiver before they go to the dump to take their trash, you don't allow people with children anywhere around. If you think about it in those terms, you don't do anything. And this is the live free or die state. People are very self-reliant. And the fact that there have been a lawsuit here and there, that's of course the nature of the world now, but it's not a reason not to do what we want to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well,
Good evening. My name is Hunter Taylor. And at first, I want to compliment the whole group of you. I mean, I've been very impressed with the discussion I've heard tonight. I'm very impressed with the data that Mr. Shea has brought forward. I would point to one thing. I was a little worried when I was hearing about this lawsuit. Then I heard it was settled. It wasn't won. Then I heard it was Primex that settled it. Let me share with you, I was 8 years a county commissioner. Primex represents the county. I do not, and we were sued a number of times. I don't remember Primex not settling every one of those suits. So I would not be particularly persuaded one way or the other about one lawsuit. I mean, I think this is something the town wants. I hope you can do it without a warrant article. If you feel that you can't, I mean, I'm not happy with you. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in the town that are going to be unhappy if that warrant article doesn't pass. Frankly, I'm confident it will, but I'm hoping that you will not put it to a warrant article. Thank you.
thank you very much. Any other input, comments?
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Donna Richardson. Mr. Shea, I have a question in your data, something that I didn't hear. It is my understanding that what we pay as a community at our dump, landfill, recycling facility is we pay for the removal of that to go somewhere else. Is that correct?
That's true. Yeah, it's quite an expense.
Does anyone have the cost increase to the town since we closed it? Since we closed the swap shop?
I
We're
don't-
paying, I believe, by the pound or by the yard of containers or by the number of yard containers. I am not a betting person. I officiate sports at the international and collegiate level for my living, so betting would be against the ethics of what I do for a living. But I'm willing to place a bet here. The only bets I ever placed are the same ones my mom placed, and those were the ones she knew she could win. I'm willing to bet you in the 4 years that the swap shop has been closed, the town has paid substantially more than the $7,500 that we're talking about in potential staff increases annually. Plain and simple, number one. Point number two, you've all commented about how much time this board has spent on this issue of the swap shop. It's exorbitant. It's somewhat ridiculous. How many people have come to speak against it? So we need to go to a warrant article for something that nobody is arguing about. Everyone who's come to you has said they want the swap shop. We're going to waste more town time to go to a warrant article. Point three. If we're going to discuss liability, I'd like the town to reconsider why we're not painting our sidewalks. A couple meetings ago, we said we weren't going to do them for another at least 2 years because they were on a state road and we'd have to get them repainted. And yet we all complain about how much traffic there is in the bay this time of year and how dangerous some of our intersections are. You're on record as saying it's not cost effective to paint our crosswalks until the roads get repaved. I would think that would go really high on the negligence list. This same group, Board of Select, voted not to have lifeguards. We have 2 swimming areas that are open to the public. We want to talk about liability? We don't post anyone or use at your own risk signs at our town boat ramp. Mr. Shea, if you fell and hit your head at the debris area on the backside of the dump, you wouldn't drown. If you slip and hit your head on our boat ramp, odds are pretty good you're going to drown. So again, if we're going to address liability, I think we need to be much more consistent. To the point the last gentleman made, Primex settles just about everything. I would like to see this board settle this, something that the town wants, that you've spent way too much time on, especially as volunteers. Take care of something that the town wants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
My name is Myrna Knight. I am your volunteer. And I just want you to know, I was there the day they closed. I took and I just swept the floor up, and the nice little gentleman with the beard comes over and he said, Myrna, COVID, we're closing it down. At that time, we had no word or lawsuit. And I can sit here and tell you, the person that did the lawsuit, I was not surprised. I took good care of that place. Fran Washburn, she's deceased now. We set that swap shop up in that trailer and took very good care of it. Yes, there was a lot of mess outside, but you can't keep your eye on everybody all the time. I had a gentleman come in with a great big TV. Here's the big sign. No TVs and things. Well, what do you want me to do with it? And I said, I don't know, sir, but the sign says we do not take TVs. You either have to take it home or go get a piece of paper and pay to put it there. But I want you to know that a lot of families benefited from that. Children come in and they ran to the toy box. People come in and they got their books. A lot of people had videos, people that live up in the mountains that don't have cable TV. They were so happy to get the VCR stuff. But it was not the reason that door closed. It was the COVID. And you all people might not have been aware of it, but I was there the day it closed. And I enjoyed it, and a lot of other people would get so much enjoyment. I've seen people, one family got burnt out. They got chest of drawers, they got a table, they got all these dishes and stuff they needed. It was a godsend to them. You're gonna have messing with that same person that had this problem with us, works for the town of Alton. And if she falls where she's working now, honey, look, there'll be another lawsuit.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public input. Okay, I make a motion to enter into non-public meeting per RSA 91-A:3, 2. Under A and D.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Roll call,
Roll
sorry.
call.
It's been a while.
Drew?
Drew, yes.
Dick, yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone.